Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, and welcome to a Texans-Buccaneers post-game show. I hope you guys never forget Robert with Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani. He's at the station. We are sorry we ran a little bit late, but Shaun had a bunch to do, as you can imagine, with everything that happened. And Shaun, we just witnessed the most exciting win, and I'm going to say this with a period at the end of the statement, exclamation point, the most exciting win in Texans history, regular season history for sure.
Maybe it may not be. All that matters is that this is the most recent one. I mean, hell, I can't remember another win that equates to this. I mean, it was just it was fantastic. It was absolutely gut-wrenching. It was exciting, invigorating. It was like on the edge of your seat, just absolute nuts today. I'm so glad we're talking about a dub with this amount of excitement as opposed to an L.
Unbelievable. CJ Stroud, NFL rookie record, 470 yards passing, ties a rookie record, 5 touchdowns, zero interceptions. That cannot be forgotten. And Shaun, in the second half, he had 4 touchdown drives, 1 field goal drive, and a game-winning 75-yard drive with 46 seconds left.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the post game and CJ Stroud talk. It was just a little 2-second quip, but that last play, that touchdown to Tank Dell to win this thing was drawn up on the sideline by none other than offensive coordinator extraordinaire Bobby Slowick.
Absolutely going to talk about Slowick because there is a lot to talk about in this one. CJ said Jimmy Ward wanted the team to do additional 2-minute work this week. Stroud said they did extra and it paid off. And Shaun, I should have known it was going to be a crazy day when I heard this to open the Fox broadcast. Here you go.
It's the NFL on CBS live from Houston, Texas. Today, the Buccaneers take on the Texans. We'll get things started from.
I had to rewind it, Shaun, and play it several times. Iron Eagle, I don't know what happened. I felt like I was the only one that noticed it because I was looking on I was like, didn't anybody notice what he just said on the timeline? And I think everybody's expecting one word to come out, another word comes out. And I think we're legal on this. YouTube can't get mad at. I don't think that's a bad word because, it came with an ears at the end of it.
You talking about the same thing that I'm thinking? Instead of saying the Buccaneers, he said fucking ears?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Hey, look, I'm in a padded room. All right, I'm in the studio. I got to do highlights and watch the game completely different than the rest of you guys probably did. That's the first I heard that, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what I heard.
That's when I knew something weird was going on, and yeah, he said that, and it's legal for me to say because hey, that's not a bad word. That's just mispronouncing Buccaneers.
That's the beauty of podcast, baby.
Yeah. So, hey, we need you guys to get in the comments. I know we're running late. I hope people are out there listening and watching us. And if you're watching us on Rewind, please comment on YouTube. We want to hear from you. We can unpack it possession by possession as we do every week. We can jump in with stuff because there's so much to talk about. And not the way you wanted to start this game. Dalton Schultz fumbles what should have been a first down throw by CJ. Luckily, the Texans hold them to a field goal. And then they respond quickly on the next drive. They get help from a Tampa roughing the passer. Big pass plays to Schultz, Dell, and a laser on the 14-yard slant to Nico for the touchdown, Shaun. So that's what they did a lot of today. They responded pretty quickly usually.
You talk about a response. I know we're going to get through this throughout, going possession by possession, but you mentioned the Dalton Schultz, fumble. I mean, what about the fact that he had 10 catches and the Texans, boom, you go right back to the well, man. Like, hey, you're a big part of our game plan today. You're here to make plays. We need you. We're going to give you opportunities. And many more times than not, Dalton Schultz and CJ Stroud, who struggled a little bit in this offense early, came through when it mattered most.
So next Bucs possession, I should say, Tampa walks it down for a TD with help from Jimmy Ward roughing the quarterback. Borderline penalty, but not sure it would have mattered much because the Texans had another penalty on that exact same play.
Yeah,
I think that would have been automatic first down. So the biggest mistake, though, was on 3rd and 16 after the Texans got a break on a holding penalty. Baker Mayfield hits a wide open Godwin for 15 yards. Sean, they played off Godwin, but they gave him way too much room on that play. That's a one you just gotta stay a little bit closer because you just can't let him get that much space after that.
Yeah, it's difficult. The Texans talked all week long about this receiving core going up against it. I mean, we did probably the best receiving core that they'd gone up against all season long, with a very capable quarterback. And this is what the Bucs have to do, much like what the Texans have to do. Hell, they're not very good at running the football either. And the Texans, they've done this all season long. They give those big cushions, at times to these receivers. And look, they're going to make you pay, especially the really good ones. And you might be in a situation, though, Robert, where the Texans felt like they were damned if they did, damned if they didn't today. And look, they got bit for it at least once that I can remember, a pass interference call on Shaq Griffin. That sometimes you've got to do a little extra. You got to do the most to succeed. I think the Texans got away with some today, but I certainly would have liked in that instance early on. I was thinking to myself, like, boy, I'd really like to see Griffin or somebody like pressed up on this dude and get a little physical with him.
Next Texans possession for the second straight week. Stroud misses a shot at a big play, overthrows Nico, who'd beat his guy. Then he overthrows Tank on a sideline pattern on 3rd down. He just looked a little bit antsy, Sean, and inaccurate on those throws early in the game. It's remarkable when you look what happened and you look back at early in the game, and I was worried about him a little bit.
Stroud actually talked about this after the game in his post-game press conference, and I forget exactly what the question was. It was something in regards to, at what point in the week did you feel like, you started to kind of come together with your receivers? And he said Thursday, and then he kind of went through like, hey, we tried to make a couple of big hitters in practice this week, and it didn't really work with Noah or Schultz or Tank in that instance. And he missed a couple, and he made mention of it in the postgame that, hey, he missed a couple early in the games, but his guys just went to him and said, hey, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, you're a badass. We know you can make the plays. This is what you're here to do. Just relax, go out and make the plays. And slowly but surely, man, as the game went along, I think Stroud just kind of settled in and started to make those plays that we'd seen flashes of him already this season. But I don't think, especially when it became nut-cutting time, that we'll get to later on, the regularity in which he was just dicing the Buccaneers secondary up, that was fun.
and now Texans legend, Tank Dell, 6 catches, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. But Sean, let's go back to it was that Stroud throw and that catch by Tank at the 15 to set up the touchdown. That was incredible. Before I go there, though, let's go to pick it up where later in the first quarter, Texans defense finally shows up. They force a 3-and-out next drive, but Slowick had me yelling at the TV on the next drive. Once again, runs on first down over and over again. This time he runs from the 10-yard line. And that series looked like garbage. Slowick did change his tendencies. So that was good. And there's some numbers to prove it, Sean. On first down, Stroud 16 of 19 for 298 yards, 4 touchdowns, a perfect passer rating. But early in the game, I was worried.
That series, I know, frustrated a lot of people. I was ready to hear just a chorus of boos, after that 3-and-out when the punt team was coming onto the field, because I felt like it was a situation where your defense had just gotten a stop, after you already had to punt the possession before following a Tampa touchdown. And this game going into it even felt like, man, you just can't give an inch to Baker and the Tampa Bay Bucks because they're pretty damn good too. And it felt like that, hey, man, they were pushed back in their own territory, and I can't really blame Bobby Slowick for the mindset here. It was, hey, Stroud's already missing a few of these throws. He doesn't look very comfortable. The last thing we want to do is make a mistake deep in our own territory, with a pick or something like that. And damn it, we're going to try to run this ball. And it just wasn't meant to be. For the first 7 damn weeks, wasn't meant to be today for the Texans. They got to figure something out on that offensive line to be able to do it, because past to set it up, hell, when the opportunity was there, Robert, they couldn't do it today. But I didn't get as frustrated with Slowick on that as I just did with the execution of this offense in the run game.
So the Texans with some big penalties in the first half. On the following punt, D'Angelo Ross, the gunner, commits a 15-yard penalty. Then the Texans with costly injuries. They lose Jimmy Ward and MJ Stewart on back-to-back plays. And Shaun, Tampa walks down the field for another easy touchdown drive. What happened to this defense? Was it just that Jimmy Ward and MJ Stewart, was that a big part of it? Because they weren't doing great before those two guys hurt, but definitely those two guys getting hurt them later in the game.
I mean, I think it was that, and I also think it was the Texans offense, couldn't keep the defense off of the field. It was bam, bam. You don't have so much time to, go over things, make adjustments, talk things through, get your mind right. You're dealing with injuries. But I also think, too, that, sometimes you can come out a little too amped up. And I was just going to stop you. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you talk about the D'Angelo Ross penalty. Was this like 2 games in a row, Robert, right? Where you've had now, I think, a combined 3 penalties on special teams alone. And the Texans already came into this game one of the most heavily penalized teams in the entire league in terms of yardage allowed per game, or given away, if you will. I think that's a huge area that DeMeco Ryans and the staff is going to have to look at and get corrected, because when you're not firing on all cylinders, when you are going through adversities within a game and guys are getting hurt, the number one thing, and DeMeco will tell you this, and he probably addresses it on Monday morning in the press conference, is you got to go back to fundamentals, and you just got to execute and make the simple plays. And I didn't think that's what the Texans did very well today, no matter who was out there. If it was Jimmy Ward, if it was MJ Stewart, if it was D'Angelo, whoever it was, they weren't making the simple plays early on in this game, and it was costing them.
Shaun, it's not just penalties. Most of the games that they've had penalties, it wasn't a lot of penalties for a lot of yards. It was a lot of penalties, if they did have a lot of penalties, for a little bit of yards. But in this game, 15-yarders were killing them left and right.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're giving up chunk plays. We know what this defense, we know what this team looks like and how it responds when they've given up chunky plays. It's been very difficult for them to kind of reel that back in and get stops. And sometimes it's too little too late. They're deep in your territory, and points are points, whether it be 3 or 7, doesn't matter. I just think, hey, 15 yards, 20 yards, no matter how you get it, if it's penalized, that, again, we've talked about it before. It's the Texans shooting themselves in the foot. Good thing today they were able to overcome it, though.
After that touchdown drive by Tampa, it was a field goal drive on the next possession for the Texans. But Shaun, the drive ended on a couple questionable decisions by Stroud. On second down, he throws the ball away when he had Tank Dell open on a screen. There's an emergency option there on the right side. I thought Tank could have at least got him a few yards. And that was so key, because then Stroud tries to extend on third down, and it's way too long after some good blocking. He throws it away, takes a hit I didn't think he needed to take, but if he'd just gotten those few yards by Tank, that would have helped him get in field goal range.
Yeah, that was, miraculous, to be honest with you, that I was scared, when he got up a little shaky from taking that hit. I mean, that's what you don't want to see. And that's that CJ Stroud coming through full force in that particular instance that is just so hell-bent on making a play. He probably realized, him missing Tank on the previous down as soon as he went back to the huddle and had his mind made up. No matter what, I'm making a damn play on this next down. And unfortunately, he didn't. But fortunately, he was able to get up after taking that hit. That really concerned me.
Yeah, I don't like him taking hits at all. And so after that, Texans D forces a 3 and out. Christian Harris, big tackle on third down.
He was
on a
huge
dump
today.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, go. You talk about Christian Harris if you want. I didn't notice him really until that play, and then he really flashed right there, and then he started making some plays after that. I thought, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was absolutely huge. And look, he's kind of come on, when given opportunities, when he gets in the flow of a game, that's when you really kind of start to notice him. He gets settled in. One thing that, look, we wanted to see it last year with him when he'd gotten the opportunity. And I think you saw it in flashes, but just him being comfortable identifying where the ball is and not thinking, just reacting. And I think you're starting to see that more and more as he gets comfortable in D'Amico's defense. A really good game for him today.
4 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss for Christian Harris. Last Texans drive of the half, they get it to midfield, but Stroud gets sacked on a blitz. Titus blocks the lineman inside, which allows the blitzer an easy path. And Shaun, this is a continual issue with the Texans line. One lineman helps on a guy who they probably don't need to help with on that particular guy, only to let another guy come unblocked.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you actually say that because over the course of the week, I was looking back at the film against the Panthers from the Texans' defensive perspective, and just how Will Anderson's affecting what guys like Jonathan Grenard are able to do, or Malik Collins was able to do in the pass rush game last week. And this, a lot of the conversation this week was, well, all right, just how valuable, how important was Will Anderson and what the Texans are doing from a pass rush sense? Well, in fact, if an offensive lineman even has one of his 2 eyes on Will pre-snap and devotes just a millisecond of a punch ready to help in a double team situation or protect a B gap or whatever the case may be, that's all it takes. Just that millisecond. I talk about that kind of stuff all the time. And I think, you flip it around and we talk about from a Texans perspective, you're right. You don't expect those types of things from a Titus Howard or from a Laramie Tunsil, but those guys can get crossed up too. And I think that was one of those instances where you're not really sure if you should help out and what the cost is going to be, but it certainly hurt them a couple of times. And I think, I don't know if it was this the play or maybe it was one later on in the game where Titus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, they had a conversation afterwards and trying to figure out exactly, who was what and whose fault that was.
Oh, I've seen this from every single guy on the offensive line. There's not one guy in particular, but whenever it happens with Titus, we think, oh, well, there's Titus. He hasn't played much guard. He doesn't know it as well. So maybe he's having that problem with responsibility. But anyway, halftime. So this is bad. We find out Kymie Fairbairn, he's done for the game. And this felt like it could be a big deal because this is the NFL. These games come down to field goals and extra points. So Tampa opens the second half with a nice drive for a field goal. They get help thanks to a Denzel Perryman 15-yard personal foul, but the Texans strike back quickly on the first play. Next possession, Stroud to Noah Brown on a slant, 75-yard touchdown. And Shaun, we can talk about Noah Brown's 6 catches for 146 yards, but I hope people didn't miss the great block by Tank Dell on that play. What impressed me is how quickly Tank made that block after the catch, because if you do it too quick, it's a pick, it's an offensive pass interference. But if you do it at the right time, boom, he's gone.
Who was it earlier this season that Tank Dell laid the wood on? It was within the first couple of 3 weeks, and we're like, wait, holy smokes, Tank Dell's blocking that cat? Was it TJ Watt? Remember the block that Tank Dell had on TJ Watt in that Pittsburgh Steelers game? And we were like, whoa, holy smokes. And, even getting ready for this game, I'm driving in, I'm listening to Sean Pendergast and Seth Payne talk about the absence of Robert Woods and how that's going to be affected, potentially for the pass attack today, how aggressive they want to be. Robert Woods has been Mr. First Down, especially on third downs. Well, Nico's been pretty good too, so I wasn't too worried about that. Noah had to step up. Tank had to step up. Hell, Dalton Schultz, if your ass ain't going to block anybody in the run game, he had to step up today, and they all three did in massive ways. But yes, that Tank Dell block, it is the little things. It's the things that coaches and players find sexy in the film room, but we just kind of pass off as like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. Hey, in this offense, it doesn't matter if you're Robert Woods, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown. Damn, I wish Dalton Schultz would catch this bug, but you all got to block and do it well. And Tank executed that perfectly.
Unfortunately, no fair, Baron. So the Texans have to go for 2, can't convert. You'd hope the D could get momentum. But another penalty was a killer for the defense. Shaq Griffin, pass interference, turns into a Bucs field goal. I'm going to just skip forward to the next Texans possession because who cares? Who cares? Because let's see what happens. Terrible setback on a questionable Dieter holding penalty on 3rd and 1. But Stroud, a big scrambling throw to Dalton Schultz, who makes a good run after the catch. And then Tank Dell, who, as great as he was in this game, remember, dropped 2 passes, including a second one in that drive of the game. So Tank Dell catches that long touchdown. And Sean, we talk about what a big game CJ Stroud. It would have been bigger because Tank dropped a couple of them. Yeah,
no doubt. A couple of them were on Tank. A couple of them, Stroud missed some shots down the field. I think Collins was one. I think Schultz might have been another one, or Tank as well early in the game. But man, that's the best part about what the Texans did today is, Bobby Slowick, CJ Stroud, none of those receivers deviated. They said, you know what, this is what our game plan is. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to keep putting it out there and taking shots. And we trust our guys more times than not are going to come through with big plays. And so I think, certainly Stroud had all the confidence in the world in his guys, and Slowick as well. But to me, look, let's be honest, from a media perspective, from a fan perspective, can we finally give this receiving core a little bit of credit for what they accomplished today?
Absolutely. I mean, just 3, Adam mentions it, 3 different Texans receivers with 100+ yards receiving. We've already talked about Tank a lot, talked about Dalton Schultz. We're going to talk about some more of these guys. Noah Brown we talked about as well. So again, the Texans couldn't convert the 2-point conversion. Stroud throws a well-designed play to Tank. It's a little behind him. They did everything right, but execute on that. So on the next Bucs possession, Texans force a 3-and-out thanks to a 3rd down sack by Khalil Davis. Nice sack there. Next possession, nice drive. Couple of good pass plays to Schultz. Big run by Hutchinson. Sean, I did see Dalton Schultz make a block on that run by Hutchinson. Wasn't a perfect block, but he got it done. And Sean, we'd be talking about a couple of terrible Bobby Slowick calls near the goal line. But Stroud hits Schultz on a perfect timed throw on 4th and goal. Schultz makes up for a bad start to the game. The fumble, 10 catches, 126 yards for that guy.
No question. And I don't even think people were giving him the respect that he deserved in the past game. And maybe it's because of the vitriol that he's garnered for his lack of blocking in the run game. But look, the dude can get open. The dude can catch through contact. He's got good hands. He's a very good route runner. You have to have this type of success in this offense with the precision that it requires. And so I hope this is a growing trend, because when you put this type of film out there against it's not a great Tampa Bay Buck defense. I mean, this was maybe the epitome of a bend but don't break defense, right? One that is really good on 3rd down, but they struggle in the red zone and in between the 20s too. You're going to get you can move the ball on these guys. You saw it today. Now the Texans put this film out there offensively and what they're capable of. Certainly Noah Brown and Dalton Schultz and everybody's already known about Tank Dell. It's just a matter of, the Texans going to use him. And I think the same thing with Nico Collins. How are the Texans going to use him the right way? Teams are going to start, really having to do their homework on making various adjustments to how they attack the Texans.
So after the touchdown, 3rd 2-point try of the half, Texans finally get a conversion on a Stroud draw. Let's remember, this game was decided by what? 2 points, kids. 2 points. That 2-point conversion was the difference in the ball game. So the Texans D, they get burned badly though on a touchdown drive, Sean, because Mike Evans blows by Steven Nelson. Both Petrie and Houston Carson, who was subbing, let's remember, for Jimmy Ward and MJ Stewart, they were sorely missed. Again, I'm going to say this, Texans looked terrible in the second half. Remember those two guys out of the game. Houston Carson, I'm sorry, he sucked, and he was way too late, as well as Petrie on that late help there on the safety help.
Yeah, I mean, look, you knew you were rolling the dice, but you had no choice. I mean, you had to get some guys out there dealing with the injuries that the Texans were. Mike Evans is just stupid good. I mean, I was getting a little mad because, I mean, we all know how good he is. Maybe he's a little underrated, I guess, in terms of, how he's compared and talked about to some of the other great receivers, younger receivers, especially in the league. But the guy just made every play, it seemed like, today. And their running back, Rashad White, when given the opportunity close to the goal line, he paid off more times than not for them too today. It was frustrating.
Yeah, and the Texans couldn't even take advantage when Mike Evans got banged up late in the game. He had to go out with the injury. They just still couldn't stop the Tampa offense. But after this last drive by Tampa, Texans respond again. That's an overriding theme. Texans respond. Two big pass plays to Noah Brown, makes it a 1st and goal, but Texans forced into a field goal on 4th down at the 11. So D'Amico sends out Dare Ogunbowale for a field goal. Sean, that was nuts. The crowd going nuts. Ogunbowale makes the field. That was crazy. I mean, low-key hero, Dare does it again.
Like, what happened, between the time that they were going for 2 with Kaimi hurt and not wanting to trust Dare Ogunbowale to kick an extra point, to when they brought him out to kick a chip shot 29-yard field goal? Like, was this one of those situations like in baseball, you get the pinch hitter down in the cages, take some hacks, and then because you're getting them ready, you're going to use them in the 8th or 9th inning or in the extras? Was Dare Ogunbowale, when the Texans were on defense, like going in the tunnel and practicing like extra points or something? Was he doing this on the sideline? Like, what were they bussing him back and forth from the practice fields to get reps in between defensive and offensive possessions? Like, why trust him all of a sudden in that instance when you have 11, 12 minutes left to go in the 4th quarter? It made me think, like, damn, like, I'm proud of the guy. I'm proud for the Texans. Like, it went through awesome. But, man, those missed 2-point conversion opportunities, when you could have had 1 point on the board a couple of times before, it could come back to bite you. And it darn nearly did.
Yeah, I would say they just looked at the odds. And they're like, the odds that he makes an extra point compared to the odds of us getting 2. And if we get 2, that's better than 1 anyway.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's 4th down from the 11-yard line. So the odds are that maybe he makes his field goal. It's way better than us getting a touchdown on 4th and 11. And the other thing is, Sean, if you miss it right there, some of the other circumstances where the Texans were behind, this circumstance, it's a tie ball game. So if you can get that touchdown, then if you can get the field goal, you're ahead. But if you don't, it doesn't seem like the end of the world at that point, at least right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know that I would have been mad at them, because if you go for it on 4th and goal from the 11 and you miss, I kind of look at that like, you know what? It's a tie ball game. I kind of felt lucky to be in it at that point in time anyway, just because of all the rash of injuries and just the craziness that had ensued leading up to that point with this game. I would have looked at it like, you know what? Played pretend in my mind that, yeah, Cam Johnston just pinned him inside, their own 15. Like, no problem, no harm, no foul. But I'm so glad that field goal went in. It's those kinds of moments, man, that make for some special calls on the radio. Mark Vandermeer had one of those today. It was golden.
So let's get to the great ending of this game, and let's start off with what happens next, because the Texans get a quick 1st down to start the next drive. Unfortunately, wiped out by what appeared to be a bogus holding call on George Fant. And I'm not going to complain too much about the officiating, but there were just a lot of borderline calls in this game where I thought, man, that could have gone either way. But the Fant one looked like a total bogus call. I didn't see what Fant did. He pushed his guy down. He never grabbed him. I don't understand it. So that kills the drive, buries the Texans deep. It was a double whammy. So because of all that, Tampa, great field position, 4:27 left. The Texans D tries to avoid their third game-winning drive of the season already. Tampa converts a 4th and 2, but the real killer after a great Tavier Thomas strip fumble, Houston Carson, again, with a chance to do something good, has the ball slip through his hands. Baker immediately throws what looks like the game-winning touchdown. Toa beat in coverage. And Shaun, the one question I have about that whole sequence of events there, I'm not a fan of Toa in coverage. Why have him on the field on a sure passing down with Tampa out of timeouts? He's not one of your better options for pass coverage to get a guy in coverage, and he got beat there.
Yeah. I mean, Blake Cashman, I guess you could say, has probably been one of the better coverage guys, but I don't feel good about any Texan linebacker on a Buccaneer in that instance. And so I think D'Amico's it'd be maybe a good question to ask him after the fact, but I don't know if you're going to get a real answer. But it just seemed kind of like he's rolling the dice there. He's looking at the entire situation and say, hey, look, they made a play on a 4th and 2, but we got them to a 4th and 2, and it's just execution. And he'd probably die on that hill and say he'd do it again. But I totally get where you're coming from. It's just I'm looking at it this angle. I don't feel comfortable with anybody in that situation that's going to be in coverage if you're a Texan linebacker.
Yeah, he's a guy that just gets way too much playing time. I just can't believe there's not better options out there. I don't know if there's anything that I think he does great. And the other thing about Toa is, he's small. So he's not just not getting there with speed. He's not big. And I didn't see who all was on the field at that point. I didn't slow it down. Sorry not to do that. So I don't know if there was a cornerback or a safety that they couldn't use right there. But I just would have much rather have a guy like that on the field at that point. So we'll get to the final drive because that's the fun stuff. 46 seconds left. We're going to be talking about, and I sort of got my notes out of order earlier. We're going to be talking about U of H legend Tank Dell's touchdown catch. But Shaun, you and I know the play of that whole drive was that catch that he makes on the sideline and the throw by CJ Stroud. Both of those things were unbelievable. Yeah,
that was incredible. And I know that's the one that's going to get all the attention. You needed a good start to the drive. Okay. And I know we kind of maybe were able to take this for granted a little bit just because of how this game played out. But to me, man, to get 14 yards right off the bat to Schultz, and then 6 yards, another first down opportunity, or not Tim, I think it was the Brown catch for the first down. But it's like, boom, you're going Schultz, you're going Brown, you're going Schultz again before you're setting it up to Dell. I thought like you needed to make sure you're getting off to a good start here, because the last thing you want to do is face a third down, deep in your own territory with the game on the line. In that situation, where you give the defense the entire field, to kind of sit back and just keep everything in front of them. To me, those boom, 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 quick plays to Schultz and Brown early in that drive were absolutely huge. And that kind of maybe set that Dell 26-yarder beauty on the sideline up. But that drive, CJ Stroud, I mean, insert quarterback. I don't know that anybody could have done it more impressively than he did today.
Yeah, and I think another thing that we sort of take for granted now, and we shouldn't, because I've watched 20 years of Texans football, the clock management by D'Amico and Bobby Slowick in the offense, to call the timeouts immediately, know that you've got them. How D'Amico used the timeouts. He used the timeout in the Tampa drive on defense, which I thought was smart, because look, if Tampa scores either way, they score either way, you're going to need the ball back. You want to give yourself some time. And they call a timeout on defense. And then After that, they called 2 timeouts in the drive, knowing immediately to call timeout and, give yourself just, every second counts right there. And they called timeout immediately. And, it was it doesn't seem like 46 seconds is a lot of time, but in the NFL, you have a couple of timeouts, you use the sideline. Obviously, Tank making that catch on the sideline, Stroud making that throw on the sideline, huge, but just clock management that I just don't take for granted ever with the Texans.
Yeah, look, I thought it was key too after the Noah Brown 14-yard completion that was in the middle of the field. That play started with like 30 some odd seconds left in the game. And dude, you got to go, because at that point in time, you ain't got no timeouts. You got to hurry up to the ball and you got to spike it in that situation and make sure you're giving yourself an opportunity to get some good quality plays off. I mean, you don't want to look at a Hail Mary situation, right? And they gotten good yardage, and man, the Bucs, they tried their butts off to move as slow as possible back to the line of scrimmage. But I thought, again, the players on the field, never mind the coaches, and, D'Amico did a fantastic job of clock management today, but I thought Stroud and that offense did about as good a job as they possibly could have done, having to run that play in the middle of the field and then, boom, hurry up to the line of scrimmage as quickly as that was allowable to get up there and spike the ball to give yourself multiple opportunities if need be.
Tank Dell, he was told he was too small to play in the NFL. You said it. He's blocking guys. He's making plays. He's running still, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. They were using him at punt return. They were using him in kickoff return today for the first time. I mean, Tank Dell, too small, too short, can't take hits, whatever. He's had one injury so far, knock on wood, but the ground caused it. He banged his head against the ground on a low throw. I mean, and I pointed out up on Twitter, and I'm just going to say it again. If you think in life you're too short or too small or too whatever to play sports, you're in H-Town, baby. Tank Dell, Jose Altuve, Simone Biles. There's nothing about being too short. There's nothing, because those guys just get it done.
Yeah, I read a quote the other day, and a lot of people have said it, and for whatever reason, this kind of popped up on my timeline, but it was a quote from Andrew Benintendi. And he'd said, the best thing about baseball is you can be any size and succeed. I think that's true in any sport. We just don't see it. And for whatever reason along the way, guys just, they don't make it, or they bow out, or they move on to something else, or maybe in their mind realize reality is slapping them in the face. But you never know. And some guys are hell-bent and just they know their purpose, and they're in a situation where, you know what, like, I can't quit. Maybe Tank Dell's that dude. At least he's just the latest example of such. I was just amazed that Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud were able to dial it up as much as they were today for Tank Dell. And maybe this, in the grand scheme of things, when they go back and they watch this film and they see what they were able to do to get guys like Noah Brown and Tank Dell especially involved in this game, I think maybe it just opens up a world of possibilities for the Texans offensively going forward. And albeit did it very shorthanded today with no Damian Pierce, your situation on the offensive line, you didn't have Robert Woods, and you incurred multiple injuries throughout the course of the game on defense, which certainly hurt. And you didn't bend or break in that situation. I mean, you just plugged straight ahead. Tank Dell, the last 3 games, he's had 11 targets and 5 catches for 89 yards. His first 3 games of his season, 21 targets, 15 catches for 251 yards, 11 targets and 6 catches today, and massive receptions by Tank Dell. I think Bobby Slowick and CJ Stroud and Tank himself is going to look at that and say, aha, look at the possibilities, man. If we want to do it, and CJ talks about it all the time, we're good. Like, we've got the capability to do this, to be explosive. You just got to trust me. I think CJ Stroud built a lot of trust from Bobby Slowick and certainly the entire team today.
Yeah, and you talk about injuries. I don't know if any other team in the NFL wants to, say, "Oh, it's injuries," because they'll say we all have injuries, but it's been
Nobody
tough. The
more so
Texans,
than the Texans now. The Texans, I think, with today, they're the most injured team in the entire league by a lot.
yeah, and it's with the Texans. I'm just going to point out the injuries have been to the points of the team where you go, man, I thought we had depth there. The secondary's gotten killed with injuries. I want to point out, by the way, with the secondary, Tavier Thomas with a big game, 7 solo tackles, 1 tackle for loss.
Yeah.
Thomas was fantastic. And then, you talk about another guy on defense that was great, Blake Cashman, 5 solo tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He continues to do it. But besides the secondary, it's also been the offensive line. And those 2 positions are positions that, you would think no team could survive so many injuries because those are so crucial to both sides of the football. And the Texans have been able to be okay for the most part without that. And I just got to give the guys credit for that. Unfortunately, you can't expect CJ Stroud to do this every week. So that defense is just they're going to have to get tougher. And you just hope, and I don't know what you've heard, Sean, you hope that the injuries to Jimmy Ward and MJ are not big injuries to this secondary, because you're running out of safeties and cornerbacks right now.
Yeah, well, and the trade deadline's come and gone, and so you're, SOL in terms of being able to, do some things there. I hate the fact that the trade deadline is so early in the season. I wish it was a little bit later. It'd make it a lot more interesting for a lot of teams in the league. There's no doubt about that. But hey, the Texans can't incur too many more significant injuries. I mean, we all know that. But I'll tell you this. I mean, yeah, you can't expect CJ Stroud to do this every single Sunday. Okay, I mean, I get that, rookie or not. But, I feel like this Texans team is good enough right now where, look, we went through the schedule a few weeks ago, and it's hard. Like, there's a lot of, coin flip games, like games that you don't feel terrible about the Texans' chances in. You don't feel great about them winning, but we're still learning a lot about this team. If they can stay close, I'll tell you this much, ride or die with CJ Stroud, because that dude is that dude. He stays poised, calm, cool, collected, whatever you want to call it. I mean, he has just got ice water running through his veins in these situations. I thought it was a really cool, back and forth in the post-game press conference. I think it was Brandon Scott from Sports Radio 610, my buddy, asked CJ Stroud about, his temperature, his heartbeat in that moment on the final drive. And, he was talking about, hey, man, I'm just calm, cool, collected. I believe in them. They believe in me, da-da-da-da. But it was another point in the press conference where he reflected back to something that Jonathan Grenard said about Stroud earlier this season. And that, hey, when Stroud's given the opportunity to be on a big stage in a big moment, the dude is going to ball out. And I think it was maybe after the Atlanta game when Stroud did what he did, but dang, the defense just couldn't hold it together and they gave it up at the end. When you put the ball in CJ Stroud's hands late in the game, is going to be on, and you saw it today. So I think they feel really good about their chances anytime they've got the ball in CJ Stroud's hands with the game on the line.
One thing about the offensive line, and CJ talked about in the postgame how important they were in this whole game, and they did not have a bad game. The run game is still a problem, but CJ had a ton of time to throw this entire game. His only sacks were really sacks, except for one breakdown where they just totally didn't know where to pick up a guy, which we mentioned earlier. But if you look at the sacks, they were just CJ holding the ball too long, or the pressures. It was a lot of him holding the ball too long, but they were really good. And Michael Dieter did a pretty decent job. It's going to be interesting, Sean, because the only way I think you improve this running game at all is move Titus Howard back over to right tackle. That would mean Juice Scruggs at left guard and leaving Dieter at center. I don't know if they would think about that, or if they're going to go, we got to put Scruggs at center for Dieter because we look at him as the long-term play. But the deal is, if you do that, you're going to give CJ Stroud his third center in as many weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but at least he has time, a significant amount of time. I mean, more than he has with Dieter, with a Juice Scruggs. That is a real question. It's a real thing to think about if you're the Texans, because it wouldn't have been the case if Jarrett Patterson doesn't get hurt. Juice Scruggs is back. He ain't playing center. Jarrett Patterson's your center, and Juice Scruggs is probably the left guard, and you're moving Titus back to right tackle. Now that, you know, Jarrett is not in the equation anymore, and Dieter's only got this one game. Who knows if Juice Scruggs is ready to come back next week, though? I mean, my gosh, you know, he's had the hamstring. It's an 11, 12-week-old injury now, and this is like the third week he's had the opportunity, or the Texans have had the opportunity to exercise him off the injured reserve, and they haven't. Maybe good news. For the first time in about 4 weeks, I did see Juice Scruggs in the locker room on Friday. In good spirits, so maybe this is a big week for him. We shall see. But if that's the case, I don't know. I feel like if you're going to tell me like, yeah, it's another center for CJ Stroud to work with, hell, what's the damn difference? They've had 4 left tackles, 4 left guards, 4 different centers, 4 different right tackles. If Titus ever moves his ass back over there, it ain't made a hill of beans. Your run game sucked either way. And at this point in time, in this offense, as quarterback friendly as it is, it looks like it could still be as friendly as ever to CJ Stroud. And the Texans have themselves some damn good centers, or a hell of a coach, or both, in Strouser to coach these dudes up on the fly. So I don't really care what they do, just so long as they do something to throw up against the wall to get this run game going and to continue to keep CJ Stroud as healthy and as upright as they have.
Well, let's close it out. Stroud, got to talk about him again. Just an electric performance. We've been talking about maybe he's a top 10 quarterback sooner rather than later. Maybe by the end of the year, he's a top 10 quarterback. Maybe top 10 is a little bit too low of a bar, Sean. I mean, this is a game that could vault him up even a few more notches than that. So, you know, I just last thought on CJ Stroud. This again, man, we talked about it the whole year. This is another level he can go to. This is another level that we've seen. And like the guys in the locker room said after the game, is this a turning point game for the Houston Texans franchise and the Texans this year?
Certainly could be. I mean, we'll have to wait till next week, because I do think there is something to what D'Amico's been talking about in recent weeks. And it was a question that I asked him about how his team has responded from losses. You know, how do you feel about them in wins? And he said, look, that's definitely something we need to work on. And you saw as much. Granted, a bye week was thrown into it, so there was that wrench, but we haven't seen this team, you know, stack wins. I mean, they've got one set of back-to-back wins this season, Jacksonville to Pittsburgh, which before today was 2 of your most impressive victories on the season. So nothing to take away from them there. But I think in terms of what he sees every single day, in the preparation, in the vibe, the attitude, or guys coming to work, you know, with that consistency, that regularity, obviously something's lacking. So this is a huge week for the Texans to get as much from their guys as they possibly can. And unfortunately, it's a big question. I'm like, well, who are you going to be getting things from? Because everybody's banged up at this point. I wouldn't be surprised to see CJ Stroud pop up on the injury report at some point this week with something. That's just kind of where we are. But it's a win like this in general, you never know what it can do to a team, especially a young one like this, that you get a taste of a victory like this and it just makes you hungrier.
Texans about 10th in the AFC right now. So they're closing ground. If they can get a couple more wins, the next week's going to be a big one, because the Bengals are not going to be easy and they could fall back again. But they now are in the legitimate conversation for making the playoffs right now. 8 games into the season, who could have seen this at the beginning of the year? I'll tell you who. Nobody could have seen this except maybe CJ Stroud, because that guy believes. Great to see an incredible Texans win, a magical one. Put yourself in the comments. Are you excited? What do you see Stroud as right now as a quarterback? Got to hear from you. Me and Shaun will be back midweek talking all things Houston sports. Great to catch up with you, Shaun. And you guys out there, love catching up with you. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, you can support the show by subscribing on YouTube and commenting on the videos. Listen to Houston Sports Talk on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and Google. Don't forget to tell a friend and share our show on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.